Hey, I'm Robert Beal, and you're about to watch an episode of my podcast, The Bealcast, shot live at Blip Roasters with Edgar Palacios, CEO and founder of the LEC. It's an interesting conversation. We don't go nearly in depth as we should on a lot of things, but if you enjoy it, like, comment, share. Hey, I'm Robert Beal. Welcome to another episode of the Bealcast. We are here at Blip Roasters in the West Bottoms, and I am joined today by Edgar Palacios.
Hey, good evening, I should say. Good morning, good evening, good day.
Yeah, no, I mean we're shooting in the evening, but I have like my morning cup of coffee, so time is not linear.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much for coming out and spending time with us tonight.
Of course.
And so Edgar, we were just talking about kind of like your background, and so raised in Miami from Nicaraguan immigrants.
Absolutely. So my parents came to this country in 1981. They are from Nicaragua. They came to this country for a variety of reasons, including like fleeing civil war, also just looking for a better opportunity. I think there's some typical immigrant story there as well. And then I was born in Miami, Florida, and then lived there till I was like in 5th grade, moved to Spokane, Washington, spent 3 years in Spokane.
Really?
And then went to high school in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, which is 2 hours south of St. Louis, and ended up in Kansas City for college in 2004. So I've been here in KC for a little over 20 years.
That is a pretty diverse swath of the country that you experienced there. I mean, Spokane, Washington, beautiful state, wonderful area.
Absolutely.
But that's a little bit different than Miami.
It is. I always joke that there are two things that aren't in Spokane that Miami has, and that is beaches and Latinos. And so I think there's the explosion of Latinos may have increased over the last 20 years. But definitely still no beaches there.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. And so how long have you been in Kansas City?
Since 2004. So I moved up here to go to college at UMKC.
Okay.
The Harvard of the Midwest. Right. And I've stayed ever since.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's kept you here?
A couple of different things. First and foremost, it was family, right?
Okay.
I think that I had 2 kids in my first marriage. We can talk about marriage too, and all this other stuff.
I mean, I've had a handful myself. So yeah.
Have you really?
Yes, absolutely.
I'm
very good at having marriages. I'm just not good at keeping them together.
We'll talk about this here in a second, but I'm a pro-divorce advocate, and we'll just talk about that here momentarily.
I am as well. No, I am. I am.
I think people should be.
Okay, so you know what I think?
Yes.
I think that marriage and divorce are the same thing. You are making the decision to either make somebody miserable for the rest of their life or improve their life.
Absolutely. I agree 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Nice.
So first 2 kids, I got married and I stayed here because of that. And then ultimately, I think Kansas City has a way of keeping you in Kansas City, right? Mm-hmm. I get to travel from, Kansas City is a great place to travel from.
Yeah.
I think it's a great place to come back to. And it's also a really great place to just build a network and build a community. And so the longer that I've been in Kansas City, the more that I appreciate the roots that I've built here. And also, it's just been amazing to see the change in the last 20 years, right? To get to experience that, to get to be in the renaissance of Kansas City. And then to see how Kansas City has transformed into an incredibly, I would say, more cosmopolitan place, right? I think that we still have some opportunities to feel a little bit more big, so to speak, but it's cool to see the attention that we've received in the recent years, and that's definitely helpful in keeping Kansas City.
Yeah, and I've been in Kansas City since I think 2000, 25 years, something like that.
Yeah.
And I grew up in Southwest Missouri in Springfield. I was born in California, but I grew up in Springfield, and so in the period of time that I've been here, I feel like it has blossomed incredibly. And in the last 2 years for me, I have only just now began to understand the culture of this city.
Yeah.
And it's not a monoculture.
Right.
I mean, there's an overarching Kansas City, versus the world type of a thing. But as you get into these neighborhoods, the West Bottoms, Pendleton Heights, Argentine, you just start to realize that we have these beautiful communities within, the community as a whole. And I find it, I find it incredibly inspiring.
I agree. You know, I think I live in Independence Plaza, so I'm part of the historic Northeast. I work in Pendleton Heights, and it's really cool to see like what it means to have to be a part of a neighborhood, but also to like understand what community really means.
Yeah,
and to see an active and engaged community. Right. I don't think I experienced that in a place like Miami or Spokane for sure.
Really,
I'm very aware of it now because I think. When you live and you work next to your neighbors, like all your decisions, you're easily held accountable for your decisions, right? Like our decisions impact our neighbors, and they're willing to talk about it. And I think that's been a really cool experience, particularly as someone who runs a nonprofit who thinks about community, who thinks about community-centric solutions.
Yeah.
It's been really interesting to see the power of a neighborhood and to know that Kansas City has multiple neighborhoods, each with their own different vibe. Yeah. And kind of purpose as well, right?
Yeah.
It's been really interesting to kind of live into that space and to really understand the power of those small hyper local communities, which we call neighborhoods.
Yeah. And so, I mean, were you always wanting to be part of a nonprofit? How did you end up in that period, that stage?
That's a great question. I think ADHD, undiagnosed ADHD, definitely helps when you're running a nonprofit, right? You get to wear multiple hats. I get to be mission oriented, which I appreciate. You know, it gives me some purpose and gives me a raison d'etre, to bring a little French in it.
Yeah.
A reason to be. But I think nonprofits are really interesting as entities, as organizations, right?
Yeah.
You think about the gaps that are there in the community, and then you figure out how to fill them. And if you have solutions, if you know that you can bring people together around a certain issue, it's a great venture. And I also understand that there's just limiting challenges that nonprofits also have, right? The constant fundraising, the constant iteration of the stories, of the constant, like, how are we doing things right and whatnot? So I've been in the nonprofit industry for roughly 20 years. Mm-hmm. 10 of those years has been me building out 2 organizations, one being the Latinx Education Collaborative and the other being Revolución Educativa. And these are organizations that are really focused on really creating the conditions that are necessary for the advancement of Latino youth. We use different tools, different tactics across the board, but it's just really interesting to be a part of it and to see how you can be proximate to solutions and try to bring those to life in order to improve your community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the idea of a nonprofit in 2025 in the United States of America is, that doesn't seem like the best business venture, just by its nature. So I've been in sales for, 20 years.
Yeah.
And I've always thought in terms of, with nonprofits, I mean, what better salespeople must there be than the people that are in that realm? Because oftentimes what you're delivering, is, are things that are often intangibles.
Right.
And so, how do you overcome that? I mean, how do you find people that are like, yeah, I'm going to back you?
I want to name that I actively avoid sales, right? And also nonprofit is nothing but sales,
Yeah, I got you.
And I think that's, I'll let you know, I started selling Cutco back in the day.
Really?
And so I don't know if you're familiar with Cutco.
No, is it knives?
Knives.
Okay.
Absolutely. So if you can sell a knife.
Yeah.
You can probably fundraise, right? And so that was my entry into sales and entry into development, but also the entry into learning how to tell a story, right? Like you practice your little, here's what a knife does, here's how you cut this with the scissors, whatever. There's a lot of, through lines between sales, to your point, and nonprofit. I think important in the intangible is one, the storytelling, right?
Yeah.
Like, why is this important to you? And adjusting that story where necessary based on the audience. So you have to think about communication and being a really great communicator. 2, you have to figure out what the buy-in is for people, right? So does everyone care about Latino youth? I don't know, right? Does everyone care about that we need more Latino educators in the world? I don't know. But, can you connect it to other people? What does it feel like not to belong? What does it feel like to have people who look like you and are part of your community and can help you move forward on stuff? What does mentorship feel like, right? And so if you can connect your mission to an emotion that is relatable or resonates with you, you can understand why we exist and you can understand the importance of our work. And you get a lot of practice on that because you get a lot of no's, right? You are talking consistently and constantly to people, talking about the mission, why it's important, why it makes sense. and they have a lot of questions, right? Like particularly if they're not either from the community or they haven't had that similar experience, or maybe they don't have the same values as you do. And so after 10 years, I don't know if I'm a more effective communicator, but I definitely have better answers to the questions that were asked.
I mean, I don't see how you're not a better communicator, for having that career. And you're having to, if you tell me, hey, there's a need for like Latino educators.
Yes.
I'm going to be like, yeah, I can see that. I'm sure there probably is that need. But you have to not only like bring that message to somebody who's maybe not in that community,
right,
but you also have to like tie it back down to why like a finite resource like money, that person should be investing in that.
Absolutely.
And my answer, and I don't run a nonprofit, my answer would be because you're investing in the overall community at large.
Yeah.
I mean, am I close?
No, I think that's so important, right? I think let's talk about education in general, right? I often say that education isn't just like a school district responsibility, right? Education is a community endeavor. And so, for example, Kansas City Public Schools, 30% of students are Latino. That's a huge population of the students, and that number is going to grow consistently or exponentially over the next 5 to 10 years, which means like we have to prepare for that as a community. This is going to be our future workforce. This is our future leaders. These are the young people that we're going to invest in already because we pay for public education as residents of our community, and then it's connecting it to why is that important, right? Like these are your neighbors. These are folks that are living right next door to you. And we all would benefit from having really well-educated young people, right?
Right.
It's not always easy to say that, right? We have political climates and things that we have to navigate.
I mean, education doesn't seem to be something that's necessarily valued like all the way to the top in a way that it has been in the past.
Agreed. Yeah, I don't think that I'm a conspiracy theorist sometimes, and so I think that there's a real issue with like the haves and the have-nots, right? Education can be seen as.
Are you kidding me?
You don't think?
No, it's all around. The disparity is all around us.
It is.
And I find there are two types of people. There are people that like see it.
Yeah.
And there are people who try not to see it.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Because you just simply cannot be aware of it.
Yeah, and I think understanding who's who and understanding what message applies to either one of those categories is important, right? But yeah, it's so interesting to be in the space and to be in a nonprofit. To your point, I could create a narrative that nonprofits are under attack in general, and then organizations that might be considered DEI leaning are under attack. I fully expect at some point for the Attorney General to try to shut us down. Not because I'm being overly sensitive to the times, because I'm actually see it happening in this moment as a community, right? We're actively seeing defunding of public education. We're seeing, with the potential closure of the Department of Education, with the stopping of contracts and money that's already been allocated to this work.
Right.
That's a real threat, and it's going to continue, and we're going to continue to push for it, which means that young people, particularly in Kansas City, are not going to have access to a quality education, and we're going to continue to cheapen the value of the product, right? Which is terrible for all of us because in Kansas City, we believe in something called inclusive prosperity, right? We want to continue to rise this community and rise the city into new levels, into new heights. And you can't do it without a strong foundation in education, right? I don't see a way possible without having a strong education, which means we need educators who care. We need educators who are professional. We need educators who understand how to teach. We need community members who are invested, who understand that like maybe they don't have kids themselves, but they understand like why it's important to invest in other young folks that may not be their own. You need policies and legislation that's gonna support that kind of endeavor. And then we need to figure out, that the world isn't the same than the one we grew up in, right? The world is very much different.
Yeah. We
have a whole bunch of new kind of issues to contend with, and that we also have to update what education looks like in 2025. I think a lot of the things that we do in education are still very much stuck in the ways that things were done in the 1900s, right?
Yeah.
When there was just small little schoolhouses, and you did certain things. We have the influx of technology, we have the influx of just different identities, we have the influx of different values and whatnot. And so if we can't contend with those things, then it becomes it's already a difficult proposition to educate a child.
Yeah.
But it becomes even harder to do that, and to do that in a way that's meaningful for the community at large.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think, the other variable that you have to account for today that maybe you didn't used to have to deal with was the politicization.
Yeah.
Is that what I'm trying to say of education? They're just a lot of things that turns out we took for granted.
Yeah.
You know what? We just assumed that was education was going to be an institution that you sort of could trust and rely on. And you can't say that today.
I think my push would be that it's always been like a political issue, right? I think education's always been politicized in a lot of ways, and we see that through the different Supreme Court issues.
I've been saying naive stuff all night tonight.
No, you're good.
That, so.
I get to practice, so I really appreciate the opportunity. No, I think that depending on who you are and where you stood and what point in time, education is a political act, to share knowledge with others, right? And to make that, to make that super accessible to others, that's a question of who can and who can't, right? And why would they and why wouldn't we? And so it's interesting to see that play out consistently in different states at the state level, right? And see who is really getting pushed out of the system and who's really being encouraged to stay on and stick around. And so some of the same tactics have been around for a while, and I don't think we really have gotten down to the core issues that we need to address in education, right? Because we kind of talk around them.
What are they? If we're talking around them,
now you're going to put me on the spot. Now I have to be super prepared for this moment. I think we have to contend with the issue that racism is a real thing in our community and in the education system. I think we have to contend with the fact that history isn't always polite and kind, and so if we don't address the harder kind of issues around history and decisions that were made, then we never actually have a real conversation, and we can't go through a healing process, so to speak.
Yeah.
Speaking about divorce. And I also think that it's important to note that resources aren't spent equitably or sometimes even equally.
Right.
And those are really difficult things, right? Because nobody, to your point, it is an Midwestern thing to do, to say hey, I'm going to create conflict in this moment. I'm going to bring up this thing that might cause an issue. And instead of saying, hey, let's lean into this issue, we're going to avoid it. And then we're going to pretend like it never happened, which we're seeing happening in curriculum now.
Yeah. It's just, it blows my mind, and so I'm 50. And so
you're not 50.
I know. I'm 50.
You're the cool vibes are maybe 38.
I can't tell you how much that means to me in this moment, to be completely honest with you. But no, I'm 50 years old.
Yeah.
And I'm white. I am in mortgages. I am, wired for this world that I live in. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I can see it.
Yeah.
Prevalent. I have seen it prevalent from day one.
Yeah.
Now, my understanding of the depth of it has gotten deeper as I've aged.
Right.
But I just don't understand. And that's what I'm talking about. People, you can see it, and people just choosing to see it. And with racism, I think, until we can just admit it's the issue, that doesn't make us any less. It actually makes us more to acknowledge there's a problem.
Yeah.
Because until you acknowledge it, and we can talk about this with divorce and marriages as well, and until I realized I was the problem, you know what I mean? You can't really heal that. I think you just keep beating your head against these walls.
Yeah, I think there's something even more insidious in some of these conversations, which is the lack of the ability to see somebody else's humanity. Right?
Absolutely.
And I think for me, when you're an adult and you look at a child and you think they're subhuman in some way, shape, or form, we've already lost the conversation, right? That is already a done deal. And I think within anything, right, if you can see somebody's humanity, you can understand that they are indeed human, that they are indeed inherently worthy of dignity and of a better life, let's say. I think we can, if we start there, I think we can make a lot of really great decisions together in community. But if you don't see my humanity, if you don't think that I'm human in any way, shape, or form, all of a sudden that becomes really difficult for that person to actually want to invest in me, right?
Yeah.
So something that I really think about in these systems is the ways that we dehumanize young people. and how we make them objects, right? We make them into numbers. We make them into
so
data.
you're talking about young people. We're not talking about Latino young people. We were just talking about young people in
just
the
in
education
general.
system. Okay.
Yeah, I think, everyone is negatively impacted by when we don't address these issues, right? Because if you don't know history, if you don't know some of the isms, if you're not aware of these things, then you're also impeding your ability to live a much more fulfilled and rich life, right?
Yeah.
I think you mentioned earlier that diversity is beautiful, right? In Kansas City, like there's so many things that are going on in the different countries that you've been in. We're talking about coffee, right? We all like different flavors of coffee.
Yeah.
Right. So we all have preferences on what those coffees are and what that looks like.
Yeah.
I think important in that is that if you're not aware that there's additional flavors in the world, then like you're just drinking stale coffee for the rest of your life, and that's not fun.
Right.
Well, maybe you don't know better, but for those who do know better, like they understand that like that diversity brings in this richness, and it brings this culture, and it brings us all these things that make, I would say, a place like Kansas City a beautiful place.
I mean, I'm not trying to like kind of minimize what you're saying, but all you have to do is look at like the average like 12-year-old's dinner plate.
Yeah.
And it's like chicken nuggets, it's like, chicken strips,
Right.
it is French fries, it is like what, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's like no diversity to it.
Right.
And it is, if you're not pushed to or to expose to, to be exposed to it, or just haven't developed the self-awareness just to kind of take in what's going on around you, you don't know any better. And so in some ways, there's got to be a little bit of grace for the straight up ignorance, but at the same time, man, it's 2025. You have so much information. You have to sort of willfully like not want to acknowledge it, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, I think grace is such a key element in this, right? I think that understanding that people are at different stages of their understanding and that they have different levels of knowledge around this, I think that's important, right? I think that we have to see other people's humanity as well, and they may not be aware of their own sometimes. And so this is therapy coming through.
No, that's
right?
fair. All this is fair. This is perfect podcast stuff. I mean, absolutely.
And so for me, like, sometimes you have to incentivize it. Sometimes you have to demonstrate it. Sometimes you have to like lean into it. Sometimes you have to be uncomfortable with it, right? I think there are all different options, but at the end of the day, somewhere along the way, I think we lost the narrative, right? We demonized diversity, equity, inclusion as things versus like, what is it like to actually live in a world that is diverse, like that we are accepting of each other, that we are figuring out ways for us to belong together as community members, and that we might be after the same outcomes, right? I think,
well, I mean, I was listening to you on The Immigrant, and there was something I thought of, and I was like, what is this society? Like this ideal, what does it look like? I mean, what level of, like, what is integration? What is assimilation? I mean, what does it look like?
I think that's interesting because I already think we have examples of that.
Okay.
Right? I think if you go to a place like New York, you see this happening already, right? Like if you go maybe some larger cities, you see this happening. I think about Miami a lot, right? Because in Miami, from my experience in my foundation, it was not rare to see a Latino leader in the community who was influential in making decisions and being in a position of power.
Right.
Like that was not a thing that we like. We're like, oh, whoa, that's weird. I've never seen that before, right? Yeah. That was part of the foundation of the city. That's part of the cosmopolitan nature of that community.
Yeah.
Kansas City, we still celebrate the fact that, we've had the first or second Latino council members since 30 years ago, right? Like that's still a thing that like we highlight because we haven't had that, right?
Right.
And so I think what that I don't think it looks a lot different than what it is now. I think that there's just more deeper conversations. I think that there's maybe a little bit more trust and that we are all aligning on the things that actually like harm us all, right? I think there's a lot of issues within our country today that like impact all of us negatively. Yeah. And so I wonder what it looks like to like organize around those issues, and they're going to be more class issues than anything, right? Like they're going to be more, maybe that's like the wrong thing, but I'm just thinking about like.
But I mean, if you talk about just in general a have and have not situation, right. You have to wonder how long can it support itself before there's some sort of implosion. And you don't have to be a conspiracy theorist. Right. I think that a lot of people are just sort of, waiting for that moment.
And I think we're testing the boundaries of certain things, right? I think freedom of speech is one of those fundamentals that we have assumed is guaranteed, and that we're also just seeing the elimination of certain ways of having freedom of speech.
Yeah.
Right? This is going to impact us all. Like, it's going to impact certain communities first.
Yeah.
But they're coming for all of us, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that that's the other issue. What I've seen recently is this recognition that, or a surprise that we're like, wait a second, I didn't think that this would impact me.
Yeah.
And now that it's impacting me.
But I think people think very shallow. I think they think they're digging into something, and then they just get comfortable with wherever they're at, and they don't really think beyond to the next level.
Yeah.
I mean, I do that on a daily basis, and I think that's what you're seeing there.
And I think we all do, right? I think we all have areas where we are not as aware as we could be on issues. We're not as aware as we can be better humans, right? And like, I think that's part of it. But yeah, it's just an interesting world to live in, and in this moment. And when I started the organization 10 years ago, I didn't think I would be like in this moment being like, wait a second, like things have gone dramatically wrong.
No kidding. Do you know what I mean? Like, it seemed like nothing comes easy, right? You have to fight and claw and scratch for like every inch.
Absolutely.
But you just didn't anticipate you'd get to 2025.
Yeah.
And, you were somehow being sucked backwards.
Right.
And so as an individual, whether you're in the Latino community, whether you're just, an ally of any, sort of anybody who's kind of involved with these struggles, I mean, you can carry only so much weight. I mean, what is the expectation of somebody to do to make a difference in something like this? Because for me, I would like, I look at this stuff and I think, there's a need there. I need to contribute. There's something I need to do. Yeah. But I only have so much bandwidth. Right. And I'm also like trying to manage my family and like trying to like make loans and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, what's the responsibility of the individual?
I have a terrible answer to this, but one that I think is like really important.
Good.
Which is like the biggest impact that you can have is on yourself.
Yeah.
And so for me, like changing the world is this really, it's as a young person, I'm going to impact these many people and I'm going to do these many things, right? And in reality, to me, it's actually more important to figure out how to improve yourself and to better yourself. Because if you're a better person and you're having smaller day-to-day kind of conversations with other people, like they might actually shift their behaviors because you were able to shift your behavior, right? Not that I don't believe in like scaling and organizing and all these other things, but I think that some of the biggest impact work that we can do is actually addressing our own issues internally, doing the hard work there. And then if we get to be better humans, I sincerely believe that the people that care about you will also figure out a way to be better humans themselves.
Well, you said scaling.
Yeah.
All right. Well, when you talk about a community is made up of individuals.
Yeah.
All right. The only way you scale that is at the individual level.
Right.
And the only thing you can impact is yourself.
Yeah.
And then, the hope is other people around you see the changes that they're making.
Yeah.
And, it can be very discouraging. I mean, I want instant gratification like all the time,
Absolutely.
right? Like I just want the problem solved tomorrow. I think that's sort of a naivety of the American people is we get geared up for these big elections.
Yes.
And then, like, whatever happens, we either complain or we're pissed off or we're happy about it. But we're not always, you know what I mean? We're not always focused on it.
Yeah.
And I actually think it's kind of designed to do that to us to some extent. But, the impact that we're gonna get there hitting like singles and doubles, not grand slams.
Right. And I think actually that's a perfect kind of call back to like this idea of the neighborhood, right? Like, I will guarantee that there is one thing in your neighborhood right now that you're upset about. Like, it could be potholes. It could be like somebody not mowing their lawn. It could be whatever it is. Like, there's something in your neighborhood that you wish you could change.
Yeah.
If you start there and you make that change, like all of a sudden it just doesn't impact your ability to like thrive in your neighborhood. It allows other people to thrive in the neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking more now about like what are the smaller, more critical like collisions that we can do. That allow for everybody to benefit, right? At least in a smaller community, because I do think that, again, that magnifies impact long term.
Yeah.
I think we're so used to like trying to be the biggest and the bestest on everything that we forget that like were you able to write a loan today to somebody who may have not otherwise received it, right?
Yeah.
Within an acceptable margin, right? We don't want to go back to like 2008.
No, I understand what you're
Yeah.
saying, but it's the constant attempt to win.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? That
Yeah.
constant like push forward, that drive forward. There's
Yeah.
like that's there that is like an American, in my opinion, kind of an American like
Yeah.
thing. I've been in sales for 20 years. I've rarely hit whatever my goal was that my boss wasn't like, yeah, but you could have done more, right? The annual budget comes out every year. It doesn't matter what's going on with the economy. The number is bigger than it was the last year. It's just like perpetual growth, right? It's sustainable, but it doesn't matter. That's like what we do. And I was talking to Danny about this when we were driving over here, and my experience when I was in Costa Rica, Dulcinea Herrera at Cafe Corazon. So she was on when we shot at Cafe Corazon a couple weeks ago, and she was talking about how the background of her family, the indigenous family, I think her father was Argentinian, if I'm not mistaken, and they didn't burn up more than they needed. They knew how to like live based, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we just seem to have this like constant consumption. And I wonder how much of an impact that has on immigrant communities, especially like second generation. Like, I think it's not uncommon from what I know, and this is just, an immigrant comes here and they just dig in and fucking fight.
Right.
Okay. I see that story and they just like make it work.
Yeah.
Okay. But maybe the background where they come from, you worked, but you also held space for yourself and your family and your time.
Right.
That's not native to like what happens in the U.S.
Absolutely.
And I wonder if the second generation isn't starting to like, wait a second, and how the challenges that creates as you sort of try to integrate into the community.
I think one of the biggest or the most radical things that you can say is I've done enough.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not about like whether you can't do more or not. I think let me just double down on that. I think it's about like figuring out that you can own your own contribution.
Yeah.
Right. Other people are going to have an opinion on like how you're contributing, but like if you can get to a place where like you own your contribution and you like, this is what I'm going to contribute today and this is it. Like at that point, like you can live with the consequences of that. You can understand that other people are going to be happy with your contributions. You can understand that other people might benefit from your contributions, but I mean,
how can you respect somebody else's boundaries if you're not respecting your own?
I'm right. And like, that's the magic of therapy, right? Like this idea. And let's also talk about one thing that like I don't ever see. I see like this commitment to hard work and suffering, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm going to work every day. I have to work every day.
Yeah.
Like, if not, I'm not going to make it and whatnot. Like one thing that we actually don't have access to is luxury. And I'm not talking about like getting on a plane, in a private plane and like having a phenomenal experience. I'm really talking about like, can I actually go enjoy a cup of coffee today? Yeah. Like at a time that I want to go to, and then like I'm going to spend 30 minutes without having to worry about anything.
Well,
right?
Dulcie said time is time is wealth, and that's a perspective shift. And like, I'm 50, right? I'd like do this, grind, and then you'll like retire and enjoy life. But like, I realized, wait a second, like there's a lot of life to try to enjoy. Like I feel like in some ways I just bought into like some bullshit, and I know that's some hippie sounding stuff, but
I don't know. I don't know if it's hippie sounding stuff. I think it's the actual reality. Like we're not going to be able to come back. Like, let me just say this: like capitalism is capitalism. And I think it's going to be here and it's going to be perfected, and we're going to have to continue participating in a lot of ways. I don't think it's going.
I don't know if I should be scared by it being perfected or not.
It's definitely. I mean, it's already perfected because you already believe that if you do more, like you're going to win more.
That's fair.
Right? Somebody told you that,
bought in.
And you bought in, and then all of a sudden you get to be 50, and you're like, wait a second, I contributed a lot of time and energy, and I didn't get as far as I thought I was going to get, and now I got all this other baggage that I'm going to carry with me into my next 10 years, 15 years, right? Yeah. Maybe that's not your story, but it can be a common story. It is. I think for us to figure out earlier in our life that like, hey, maybe like I don't have to do everything, and maybe like there is a comfortable wage that I can get up to, and maybe like there is a life that I can live here that allows me not just to like care for my family, but also like enjoy time. I think that that's important, right? And I don't know if it's hippie as much as like it's humane. Yeah. Because the reality is that corporations, companies, nonprofit organizations, any like those things treat people not as human, but treat them as like a tool, right? Like as a cog, so to speak. And so if we can actually acknowledge that we are human in systems, then like we're able to actually break some of those expectations and say like, no, I'm not going to do that because actually it's not It's impossible.
But you say we're human in systems,
right?
But we've done this weird thing where we've taken these systems, and we have justified them being systems and not humans to do the things that are inhumane. Do you know what I mean? It's like with a corporation, it's like, hey, listen, you got to maximize profit shareholder.
Right.
It's like, wait a second, a corporation ain't a thing. Do you know what I mean? It's a group of people. So we sort of absolve ourselves by saying, hey, a corporation's there to make money, regardless of what the consequences are.
This is what my MBA taught me. When I was reading the book The Goal, I forget who the author is, but like one thing you learn from the book The Goal is that the only purpose of a corporation is to maximize shareholder return, right? Like that's what it is. Yeah. Here's the thing: I will guarantee you that somebody at that company is living their life humanely. Yeah. Yeah. Somebody in that corporate structure is the human, and that person is the person that's determining whether you're human or not, right? Like that's the way, right? I think this is the biggest issue, right? Like some people get to decide whether you're human or not, and some people, and like we just buy into it. Yeah. Right. So my whole like next 20, 30 years is not about like contributing more. It's about where do I think I'm going to make my most impact? How do I want to make my most impact? Understanding that there are going to be consequences attached to those things. But like at the end of the day, one thing I refuse to do is kill myself for like maximizing somebody else's profits. Yeah. Well, what do you think of in terms? What do you think of? Do you think in terms of your legacy or a legacy? That is such a ego-driven question, and I say that lovingly to myself because we all think about legacy and we all think about impact in that way. I don't know. I think about like my legacy here's the thing, like I'm giving up like a well-lived life for like a future that I can't even control. Yeah. Right? This idea that somebody's going to be able to tell our narrative and tell our story better than we can. This idea that like our legacy is going to be felt like generations on, right? Like we actually don't control any of that. Yeah, and I think legacy actually is sort of like a highfalutin word for impact. Yes. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And when you consider how finite, how small a speck of, we are, what impact are we going to have? And I look at it, the people closest to us, that's really the only impact that we potentially can control. Yeah, and I think that's important, right? Like recognizing that, as important as we are, and we are important, like we're also one of like 9 billion people. Yeah. I believe, I think I have a good idea. Yeah. But I got to be honest about and being like, there's 9 billion other people. Right. There's probably been plenty of people that had that idea. Right. Now, the difference is who's going to put it in action, right? But yeah, I mean, we're one of a lot. I think my job in this moment is to figure out how to pass the baton, right? Because like I got 3 kids who are growing up, who are going to be their own humans, who are going to figure out life in their own ways. And like, if I can set them up for a better version of how I lived, that allows them to make their decisions and allows them to like make their mistakes and whatnot, but at least they have a foundation that they can build from. Yeah. Like, I think to me, that's legacy is enough, right? Now, if I want to have a building that has my name on it and like, in perpetuity, like that's a whole different thing, but that causes issues because like, we've seen what happens, you're not judged by the values of today, you're judged by the values of the future. And the future shifts and changes, and so what you think you're doing right today may not be what you think is right in 20 years from now. Yeah. So, or what people think is right 20 years from now. So to me, it's like, how about if we actually just think about like what is our day-to-day impact? Yeah. Right. Like, what am I doing in the next hour that makes somebody else's life better, and assuming that that's actually enough. Now, some people are high achievers and overachievers, and like they're not going to love that. I get that, appreciate that. Go do you. I think for me, it's important that we actually honor like our capacity, honor that we are indeed human, that we are not perfect, and that our responsibility is first and foremost to ourselves, and then whatever we can do for others, like we do for others, right? Yeah. Like, I think it can be that simple. I think that's a lovely point to make, and I think as a parent with your children, I have 3 boys, and I think of the mistakes that I've made, and I'm very, very open when I talk to my boys about the mistakes I've made, because my thought is if they're going to make their own mistakes, right? But if they have some insight as to like where I was at and what my motivation was and why I got it wrong,
maybe they figure that stuff out at 38 where I figured it out at 46, right? And that makes a huge difference. But, just understanding, if you can accept, like, when you're giving enough, when you're contributing enough, and when you can identify that, the earlier you can identify that in your life, probably the happier the existence is, right?
Absolutely.
And it goes back to, so my best friend's mom, Vicky, we talk about it all the time, being content. And I'll talk to her 3-4 times a month, and twice we'll have conversations about just people learning to be content. But in 2025, capitalist, nobody wants you to be content, man. You got to continue to consume.
Right.
But if you can reach that point, you start to have a lot of clarity, and you start avoiding a lot. And we're in therapy now, right? You start avoiding a lot of these kind of like pitfalls and things that, when you're consuming, you're not aware of it.
I think one of the hardest things to recognize is that we're all being consumed.
Yeah.
And that we are open for consumption.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that is one of the hardest things I think to come to grips with as an adult. Like, somebody at some point is consuming you, right? Whether it's your energy, your ideas, your work product, your whatever it is, like, it's happening.
Yeah.
And so when you can recognize that maybe you're no longer open to consumption, or maybe you're open to less consumption over time, like, I think to that point that allows that. I also want to just name something that I've learned just recently, and I'm embarrassed to say this because, like, I feel like it should have taken me.
It's a safe space.
And I'll talk about that too here in a second, if I have the time. I used to think that, like, I was searching for a feeling, right? So I'll talk about confidence, right? Like, I've had a lifelong struggle with confidence, and then one day it hit me that, like, confidence is a feeling, but it also can be a practice, right? Sometimes I have to do the thing that allows me to be confident, or maybe it's a confident action that I haven't done before, so it's a practice. So when you said, like, content, like, it made me think about, like, how do you practice contentment?
Yeah.
Right? You may not feel content, but, like, is there something that you can do today that would allow you to get to the feeling of contentment, right? Whether it's, like, taking a 10-minute break and, like, going outside and talking to a tree. Maybe it's, like, taking that picture that you want to take, or making that post that you want to post, and it brought you that momentary thing of joy, or whatever. To me, like, I have often, like searched for that feeling, and in searching for that feeling, I find that I can't do it, or can't sense it. But, like, if I practice contentment, if I practice confidence, if I practice these things, like, it actually starts building up those feelings where I can, like, oh, now it's attainable, right?
Yeah.
On the safe space stuff, like, I actually don't think any space is safe.
Okay.
Like, I really don't believe in safe spaces, because ultimately, like, that requires a lot of trust and a lot of other things that, like, you really got to, like, do deep work there. I do believe in brave spaces, which is, like, regardless if the environment is safe or not, are you able to show up in the most authentic version of yourself?
Yeah.
There's layers to that. That doesn't mean you show up perfectly, but, like, are you able to, it's a courage thing for me. Like, are you able to show up in the room that you may not know everybody, or you may not understand everything, but, like, you're still going to show up as who you are, committed to your values, committed to your beliefs, and, like, maybe with the idea that, like, you could be wrong.
Oh, man, I'm telling you, I have... one of the things that has been a big difference maker in my life is when I sort of just decided, you know what, I'm probably wrong. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Instead of being at that point where I'm, like, defensive about it and like bothered by it, just sort of being like, I'm probably wrong. And when you, like, take that mindset that you can be proven wrong, like, there's a lot of stress that goes away, because you don't have to prove yourself anymore.
Right.
You can be like, just like that other thing, I was wrong. Yeah. I'm still going to try, though. When you talk about how you tie it into, like, your confidence, imposter syndrome has sort of been a theme of this of the podcast here with Danny. I got my buddy Kyle who's sitting here, who, like, I watch this guy and I think he's, like, just a badass and can do anything. Yes. Both of us have kind of taken risks in our careers over the last couple of years, changed careers dramatically. Yeah. And so I make my change, and he's looking at me, and he's like, "Oh, you're fine. You're going to do it. I know you can do it." You know, I don't buy any of it, right?
Right.
But then he makes his change, and I sit there and I'm like, "Dude, like, you got it. I've watched you do this all." And I guess it's a lot easier to be content when you can, like, sort of learn to just, like, have, just accept, like, just be confident.
Right.
But it's not just as simple as just saying be confident. It's more of just, like, all you can do is go after it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think if you practice taking that risk, you're practicing confidence, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, like you may not feel confident in that moment. You might have to take that leap. And like the fact that you took the leap is an indicator that there's confidence there, right?
I mean, fake it till you make it.
Yeah. And, you know, here's the thing, like we're all faking it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, and like there are people in this world who think that there are rules, right? Like the rules are hard and set. And the reality is over time, I think I've learned that like rules are kind of just made up.
Yeah, I posted I can't remember who it was, but I posted something on the Instagram the other day, and it was somebody who was like, I kept waiting to go into a room where like all the people had it figured out.
Right.
And he was just like, we're all idiots all the way to the top, all the way back down.
Absolutely.
We're literally all just making it up. And when you realize that, like, you know, nobody's a grown up, in some ways it's kind of like, that's cool. You have a little bit of grace for yourself. In other ways, it's sort of like, what the hell? It's all duct taped together.
You know, where it messes with me the most, doctors.
Oh, yeah?
Absolutely. Like you went to school for 6+ years. You did your residencies. You had your special like designations and whatnot. I'll just share this. Recently, like we were talking to a neurologist, something that's going on within my family, and the neurologist was like, you know what? We actually really don't understand a lot of the brain.
Yeah.
And I was just dumbfounded by that comment. I'm like, wait a second. What do you mean you don't understand a lot of the brain?
Yeah.
They're like, you know, like we have best guesses, but like at the end of the day, we're just kind of troubleshooting here.
Right. Right. Yeah.
You spent all this time and energy like learning about this specific day to tell me like, hey, like we're just going to give you 2 ibuprofen and hopefully that's going to work out. You know, like it is wild to like understand that like they call it a medical practice for a reason.
Right. And at the same time, we know exactly how many yards Patrick Mahomes like averages on second down passes.
We sure do.
Of 5 yards or less.
And you know
what I mean?
It tells you what we value, right? Like as a society and as a community. And no judgment there. I think it's just an indicator of that.
I mean, we're complicated. The human body is complicated.
Absolutely.
So it's no surprise that you wouldn't have it figured out. You would think maybe we'd be further along, but you know, it's nearly impossible to figure humans out.
Right.
You know.
And so that's my understanding. And so I'm hoping that as I continue to get older, if I get to get older, that like I continue to have these wonderful revelations and keep to myself more.